listening to The Jake Green Show, brought to you by Great Lakes Lifting Solutions.
Welcome back to another episode of The Jake Green Show. Today in the studio, Chuck Vaughan joins me. Chuck is the race day operations manager at Fairbury Speedway, also the owner of Elite Outdoors. Chuck has a very special story, and I can't wait to peel back the layers and talk to Chuck here right now. Chuck, we went around the college a little bit. We got you in the studio. Thank you for joining me, and I can't wait to kind of dive deeper into who Chuck Vaughan is.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on. I'm looking forward to it.
So, Chuck, first and foremost, you have an involvement with the Fairbury Speedway. You have your own Elite Outdoors, landscaping outdoors company, and you have a lot of cool things behind you, and you have some special circumstances with you as well. However, I want to go back to the beginning. I want to know about your childhood. What did that look like growing up in, small town America with Fairbury? What did that look like early Chuck?
Yeah, and a lot of people, everybody close to me knows I actually grew up in Cropsey, which is about 10 miles south of Fairbury. Population, I think back when I grew up there, population was maybe like 150 people in Cropsey. So definitely small town America, but loved growing up in a small town, There was only so many children in a small town like Cropsey growing up. So, the friends you made ended up being lifelong friends pretty quickly, So I enjoyed. I wouldn't change my childhood for nothing. I've had people ask me, well, wouldn't you rather live in a big city? Absolutely not. I think my childhood and upbringing in a small town like that, when it was time for me to come back to that scenario, that's how I wanted my kids to be raised too. So yeah, it was cool. You could get away with a lot in Cropsey, I'll tell you that.
I bet the 80s in Cropsey had to be an interesting time.
It was. Back in the in the late 70s, you've probably heard about it, but in the late 70s when we really used to get a lot of snow. I'm talking snow piled up to the roofs of our garage, unpassable roads to get to Fairbury, blacktops closed. Those, as a kid, those were the best days ever. You get up, you're watching for your school to, scroll across the bottom of the TV, Channel 3, to see if your school's closed for the day. And if it is, man, it's a snow day for everybody. All the kids seem to gather together, all maybe 12 or 15 of us that were in that town. So made some lifelong friends, though, growing up in a small town.
But what were some stories that you have from Cropsey? Because maybe if you can tell them, right? Like, there had to be something
some of them I don't know if I can tell.
that just stuck out to you during that time. Like, again, the 80s in Cropsey, that's small town America. I mean, that makes Fairbury looks like, it makes Fairbury look like a big town, but you graduate from Prairie Central, right?
Yes.
And so what's that kind of early high school years? What were you doing? What was fun? What made your life happen?
So, growing up in a small town, had its advantages, but also some of the disadvantages. There's only so much to do, so, and unfortunately a lot of the time that you consumed may have been more not so maybe on the wrong side of things, you
Right.
didn't I wouldn't say we were hellish kids, but devious, ornery would be a good word for it. But one of the memories that always sticks with me growing up in a small town like that is I always used to, you rode your bike everywhere. Mm-hmm. I mean, within a minute you could be across town over at your buddy's house. But just south of Cropsey, about 3/4 of a mile, there was a little creek that ran through several farmlands out there. And we had, back then, you didn't ask for permission to go fish these creeks. You didn't know whose land you were on. You just went. And if the landowner stopped you, he was usually pretty lenient and let you just go about doing what you were doing. But we always used to frequently visit this creek south of Cropsey. And I'll never forget this time. We had a spot just down from the bridge where we rode our bikes down to the bridge, bringing our fishing poles, our tackle, everything. Park at the bridge, and we'd start walking along the creek. And back then, we did a lot of snagging, which is illegal now. Okay. You can't, which snagging was, you had a big old treble hook, you throw it out in the water, and you just yank, and hopefully you catch something, But these creeks, at some points, you could damn near jump across them, So, but there was one spot on the bend of this creek that there was a big hole. Could never see the bottom of it. We knew it was deep. We always fished that hole quite a bit. So one afternoon I went down there by myself, which wasn't unusual. I went down to the hole, and there was this old, I don't know if I think it was maybe put in for retaining to keep the bank from eroding into the creek. Well, over time, that it was a bunch of boards with telephone poles sunk in the ground, and then boards nailed up to it to hold back the bank. And over time, it started to lean forward and more and more and more. Well, the nice thing it was a great spot where you could just lean against it, almost lay on it, and you were looking right over that hole. And you could fish that hole. So we snagged in that hole quite a bit. One afternoon, I was there by myself, and I snagged one, and I knew immediately, I was like, oh my, this is a big fish. This is a really big fish. My line was singing just straight. He was going straight up the creek. And I thought, oh my God, I've never had, I'm guessing I was probably 10, okay. 11, 12, maybe somewhere in there. And I'm this is like no other experience I've had fishing, I finally, I don't know, it was maybe 10, 15 minutes of fighting this fish because I'd snagged him by the tail, which is about the worst place to snag them because that's where all their power is. So I finally get this fish to the bank, and I'm scared to death. I have no idea what this fish is. I've never seen a fish like this in a creek. We're snagging suckers and, just bottom feeding fish. There's no bass or crappie or stuff like it in there. It's just a lot of bottom feeding fish that are in there. Nothing really trophy size. And I get this fish to the bank, and I'm looking at it, and I can see it's got teeth in its mouth. And I'm scared to death. I'm like, I don't even know what to do. My treble hook is still hooked on this fish's tail. I drag him up the bank and get him up to the top of the bank. He's still hooked on my treble hook. I still have no idea what I'm going to do, but this fish is giant to me. I mean, he was probably, I'm going to guess, every bit of 24 to 30 inches long. Big old mouth on him, big old head on him. At that time, I had no idea what that fish was, So being me, thinking, oh man, I've got something special here. I take my pole, still with the fish hooked to it, run back to my bike. I pedal all the way back to Cropsey with this fish hanging off my line. I've got him reeled up as high as I can get him on the pole with my pole hanging out over the handlebars and the fish just dangling by my front tire. I get back to the house. I don't know what time it was, late afternoon. Dad was soon to be home from work, and I thought, well, Dad will know what this fish is. So Dad gets home. Of course, I'm all excited, and I Dad, come look at this. So he comes in the garage, and I got it laying on a tarp in there, and he says, where in the hell did you get that? And I said, well, just south of town here, out of the creek we always fish. He goes, that's a northern pike. Well, what's that? He goes, that shouldn't even be there. He goes, where'd you catch it at? So I told him, in the deep hole, that we always fish. Well, long story short, I guess northern pike, they're in some of our lakes around, the Bloomington Normal area, Champaign area. A pike will swim upstream to spawn. And a lot of times if they can get in these inlets or outlets out of these lakes, they will swim up these smaller streams to spawn. Somehow, whether that was what happened with this pike or it was a flood that he got flooded out into this creek, the chances of him being there are very, very rare. But Dad got his fishing scale out, and this pike weighed almost 6 pounds.
Wow.
And that was it was such a big deal. I didn't think it was, but it was such a big deal. He called the Fairbury Blade, which, we no longer have anymore. But the Fairbury Blade even came out, sent a photographer out, took a picture of me holding the fish up, posted in the Blade.
Really?
Yeah. So, pretty cool story growing up in small town. So that was one of the things that we did a lot of.
That's actually pretty cool. It is,
yeah. And my mom cut that out. She made sure, my mom was anal about making sure that, all my memories from high school elementary, junior high, anything that involved being in the blade or, she scrapbooked it for me. And it was cool to go back, see that photo in my scrapbook.
That's super cool. I'm sure
it is.
You still have that.
I do, absolutely.
You can pull it out and,
Yep.
There's 10-year-old Chuck.
I've showed both my boys that, and they think it's pretty funny. But, it's a pretty cool experience when you're a young kid to grab. And luckily I was smart enough. I didn't, grab it by the mouth like a bass or something. I mean, it would have just tore me up. But, pretty cool.
The Jake Green Show is brought to you in part by Great Lakes Lifting Solutions. Great Lakes Lifting is the glass industry's toolbox. Looking for any model smart lift, wood power grip, or spider crane? Go to www.greatlakeslifting.com or call 815-931-4825. That's 815-931-4825. Offices in Illinois, Florida, and Texas. Great Lakes Lifting Solutions is a proud sponsor of The Jake Green Show. So you catch fish and you grow up and you get into Fairbury, town as far as Prairie Central. You go to high school, you live through that. But then it's time to move on and to move out and to do some other things. What did after high school look like for you? Did you go to college? Yep. What was that kind of, next few years did you have?
So, about my sophomore year of high school, it was time to kind of start thinking about, where does my future lead me? I didn't really have a good grasp on what I wanted to do. I knew I kind of wanted to go to college, but I didn't really know what for. So my junior year going into high school, I took the ICE program, which I went to school half a day, worked half a day. At that time, my dad was a retired Teamsters truck driver for Newsbomb from 26 years. He also had started a carpet business, which is now still flourishing, ran by my brother. But he did that on the side. But when he retired as a truck driver, he decided to be the superintendent at the golf course, Indian Creek Golf Course there in Fairbury. Of course, my dad raised me on golf. My dad was a golfer from his very young age all the way up until he passed. And he started me in golf when I was about 7. And it was something I really enjoyed doing whenever I had the time to do it. But I thought, this is kind of interesting. I think as much as I liked golf, what about working on a golf course? So I did my ICE my junior and senior year, going to school, working at the golf course. And come my senior year, I had made the determination, this is a field I am really kind of interested in.
And during that time you were working, not to cut you off there, but during that time you were working at the golf course, was that grounds management?
Yeah. And, it was just me, my dad, and my brother, and one other classmate, Steve Meister. He was our part-time, summer help. But it was just us three, me, my brother, and my dad, that ran that golf course. Wow. Of course, it's just a 9-hole golf course, so you don't have a lot of help anyhow. But it really got me intrigued of working outdoors, for one. I really enjoyed that. And then just manicuring a golf course, that really piqued my interest. So by the time I was a senior, I was fully committed to going to horticulture school. So I started to look around to see what places in Illinois had some of the best turf grass programs out there. And Danville Area Community College actually was one that popped into my radar. The other thing I was hoping to be able to do, of course, I played 4 years of high school golf, was pretty successful at doing that. Placed 9th in state my senior year, which was really a cool accomplishment. There's only been one other golfer since the conception of Prairie Central that's made it into the top 10 in state in golf, and that's me and Denny Bull. We're the only two since Prairie Central was consolidated in 86, I believe. So 88, I graduated. I got a full ride golf scholarship to Danville Area Community College.
Jaguars, right?
Yes, the Jaguars. Yeah, absolutely. Pretty good basketball program they had back then.
Yeah, they kind of have that with Parkland too, yeah.
Yep, but they had Charles Schroeder was the horticulture professor, was one of the most well-known turf horticulture professors in Illinois.
Really?
Became highly recommended from some of my mentors, my golf coach. I wasn't thrilled about going to Danville, to be honest. But, hey, if they're going to pay my schooling to go there on a golf scholarship, I went through 2 years of turf horticulture and landscape management and got my degree from there.
What did you do? So you have your associates now.
Right.
What was that like for job placement then after that? I mean, obviously you get done and now you're kind of at a point where you're like, okay, I have a degree. What do I do?
Now what do I do? Right. I did, after my first year of college, I did my internship at Crestwick Country Club in Bloomington, which is still there. At that time, it was a private course, which it still is today. But after college, my wife, to date, I met her at college. She was playing basketball for Danville. Yeah, she was a pretty good basketball player.
That's cool.
She played at Hoopston for high school. So kind of some conference rivals there. Hoopston was in our conference back then. Corn Belt Conference is where we were at. Yep. So I actually met her through a mutual friend of mine that I graduated with. She was rooming with my now wife.
Wow.
So yeah, kind of a neat twist there, but got to know her my first year. My second year, we got a little more serious. She was dating somebody the first year of college. So, but come the second year, there was a split up there and
you're ready to strike.
Yes. I just sat back and waited for my chance to pounce.
You're like the sixth man on a basketball team, just like ready to get in the game. And finally like that one starter fouls out and you're like, yeah.
Oh, he twisted an ankle. Oh, that's bad. He's going to be on the DL for a while. So,
that's awesome.
But it's funny how things work out anyhow. But so, when we graduated, we both graduated from college, not really a clue of where we were going to go. We ended up landing in Bloomington. I took a position back with Crestwick Country Club where I did my internship. We worked there a while. My wife was kind of toying with retail a little bit for a few different stores. And I think it was about a year after I graduated, a year and a half after I graduated, I got a call from my roommate from college who was also on the golf team, was also there on a golf scholarship, actually played golf against him in high school many times. He was from Dwight.
Okay.
And he called me, and he had landed out of college. He, of course, was going through the same horticulture classes as I was to get his associates. He had got a job up in the northwest suburbs, Elgin, as a golf course assistant superintendent. He called me out of the blue one day because we still kind of stayed in touch even after school. He called me one day out of the blue. I hadn't heard from him in a while. He said, "Hey, would you be interested in working on a golf course up here?" I said, "Absolutely. What do you got?" And he's like, "Well, where I'm at, they're looking for another assistant superintendent. And I've mentioned your name to the superintendent. He'd like to interview you." Long story short, I went up for the interview, got the job. We then immediately moved up to the northwest suburbs. We lived in Elgin for a while, and I worked there. It was neat because this golf course, it was owned by two Italians, lot of money. Wasn't a private course. It was like a semi-private. You had some members, but yet you had some, it was open to some public outings as well too. But it was a golf course in the summer, spring, summer, fall, and a ski hill in the wintertime. So the backside of the golf course, there was several holes that accommodated the ski hill part of it come wintertime. So I was assistant superintendent on the golf course during the golf season, and I was a second shift night ski hill supervisor in the wintertime.
That's really, I've never heard of a golf course being a ski resort as well.
Never,
and
no.
What's interesting though is that gives you an extra job during the winter. Like
it really did.
You didn't stop when the weather got cold and went, what do I do now for the next
Right.
couple months?
Well, and, being an assistant superintendent, you're employed full time. So, even through the winter time, you're not working as long hours as you did during the prime time of golf season. But there was still plenty to do inside if need to be. But yeah, there was no layoff time. It was a transition, basically. You were transitioning from golf. We had a maintenance building for the golf course. And on the other side of the course, we had a maintenance building for the ski hill. So it was pretty cool. Not ever in the whole time I grew up, I never skied. Not once, snow skied. So all of this was very new to me, grooming ski hills, tow ropes, tow lifts, working on tow lifts and tow ropes, grooming the ski hills. And what was really cool is we made our own snow. So, something I'd never seen before. Didn't even know they did that. I just figured these ski hills, they just got to rely on that we have a good winter. But no, we had snow towers that were, 50 feet in the air. We had snow guns we pulled to different areas of the ski hill. And so our job as the second shift supervisor, the ski hill closes down at 10 o'clock. Once it closes down, our shift then gets everything ready to make snow, and then the third shift comes in and actually makes the snow. So, yeah,
Wow.
Pretty cool.
I was one of those people as you were telling me that of they must hope that they have a nice northern winter. And
yeah. That was kind of my thought. I figured, well, being that close to Chicago, and that you getting all that lake effect, coming off of there, surely they have just feet, foot upon foot of snow, throughout the winter. But I'll tell you, if you didn't make snow, you didn't ski most of the time, most of the winters, Now, was it comparable to the real stuff? Absolutely not. There was definitely a big difference. But, standing back looking at it, it looked like snow to anyone, the naked eye. But it was a pretty cool experience just to be able to see all that, how that's done.
That is really interesting.
Yeah.
So you go up to Elgin, you have that experience, you're a ski guy for a while, but then, at a certain point, I know you've talked about you wanted to come back home. You wanted to get out of that urban lifestyle. I think even Bloomington, you'd kind of like that's almost still too big. You wanted to come back to a little bigger than home. You wanted to come back to the Fairbury area at least. So what was that conversation like? Like what made you go, okay, I want to come back to Fairbury, and then what was that process even like as you got back down here?
And it wasn't immediate. Of course, me and at that time, just my girlfriend. I hadn't, proposed or anything to her. We were just living life at that time. 2 young kids, out on our own, no kids, having a good time, experience everything life they could throw at you. We decided at that time. She was working in retail full time for Kohl's, I believe. Okay. She was in management at the Kohl's department store when I was working at the golf course. Her mother was a district director for Tharlson Enterprises, which they own a chain of hotels, Super 8s, Choice, Fairfields, a lot of those big operations.
One of those conglomerates that owns a ton of little stuff.
Exactly, yep. And I don't even know if Tharlson's still around anymore as a corporation. But anyhow, her mother was a district director, so she was in charge of a certain district. A position came open for one of the hotels as for a manager in Indianapolis. And her mom asked her, would this be something, she had no management background, just a lot of retail, but was pretty fitting for the hotel industry. Asked her if we would consider to move to Indianapolis, she would put her at management at this job. So that's what we did, Okay. And so we went from west suburbs of Chicago. We moved to Indianapolis. I think we were there for about 2.5 years. Of course, I went there with no job. I was the maintenance man for the hotel as I was searching for a job back in horticulture once we got kind of moved in and settled in. And I think I was maybe doing that maybe 5 or 6 months. And a position came open in Carmel, Indiana at Brookshire Country Club. Okay. It was another semi-private golf course. And I went and applied for the assistant superintendent's job, got the job, loved it. Worked for a great superintendent there. I think I was there about a year and a half, and the board, one of the members from the board approached me one day and offered me the superintendent's position. And at that time, I was really close to the superintendent, and he didn't even know it was coming.
Wow. Okay.
That they were going to let him go, which, as a young kid, that's a lot to take in.
It's a lot of emotion there.
It really is, because I had so enjoyed working for this guy, and he was so down to earth, and he knew his shit, and I learned a lot from him. And, knowing what's coming for him, was pretty hard to take as a young adult.
It's one of those things where those emotions are like, this is a mentor of mine. This is a guy that I've looked up to. I enjoy working with, so on and so forth. Yeah. And then you hear he's going to be out of a job soon, but I'm the guy that is going to take his spot.
Yeah.
Possibly.
How's that going to look? How's that? And he had been there a long time, 20 plus years probably.
Wow.
Real down to earth guy. Took me to the Indy 500 every year. I mean, we were down in the infield. Just a really a very good mentor for me.
You were even on a personal level, not even just work mentorship.
Yeah.
I mean,
absolutely.
This is one of the guys that you could call right if you needed it. And
if I needed to get out of jail card, I could have called that guy, and he would have dropped what he was doing and been there. He was that kind of guy.
I could just imagine.
Yeah, it's tough
sitting there, especially when you get told, you're like, ooh, because like exactly like you said, what's that going to look like?
Right,
you're going to be, hey, thank you for everything. Now I have your job. See
ya. By the way, you're out of a job, and I'm taking your job. So I don't remember exactly how that whole conversation went, but it went fairly smooth, and he was okay with it, And, from that point, I really decided, man, this is really where I want to be. I really want to stay in golf course. Well, I think about a year after that, my wife got transferred from the hotel in Indianapolis to... And it was her decision, but it was a chance for us to move back to Illinois, to be kind of closer to where I grew up, kind of where she grew up. So there was a position that opened up at the Morris Hotel, and I can't remember if it was a Super 8 or a Comfort Inn. I think it was a Comfort Inn, owned by Tharlson. So we made the transfer, moved back to Morris. She started managing that hotel. Of course, now I'm out of a job again. But I figure, won't be hard to find. It was a little harder than I thought, to get back into the golf course industry without going back up to the northwest suburbs, which we really didn't want to do, So an opportunity came open for just a labor on a landscape company.
Okay.
And it was GNC Landscaping. It was owned by a big old Italian dude, just a really cool guy, but had kind of built an enterprise with this landscape company. So I had my first real... Now, I worked with several Hispanics at Villa Olivia Country Club, where I worked in Elgin. So I had that experience before, but now I'm working with a straight Hispanic crew, and the only... guy that spoke really good English was the landscape foreman. He was just like me, kind of a down-to-earth white boy that had been with George, was the name of the owner that owned the company. Been with George since the conception of GNC Landscaping. So really cool guy. Learned a lot from him, but even though I had my degree in landscape management, this was new to me. This was my first go at, trying landscaping as opposed to turf horticulture and golf course maintenance. So I tried it. I labored with a lot of the Hispanics. I kind of worked myself up into kind of an assistant foreman position. And I don't remember exactly what year it was. I'm going to say it was probably around 94, probably 93, 94. I had made the decision. I didn't really like where I was at working for this particular landscape company, but I knew that I liked what I was doing as opposed to even being back on the golf course. So at that time, I actually we had decided, you know what, let's move closer to my parents. We won't be too far from your parents. We hadn't decided Fairbury was the place we were going to be, but, I think I probably had a lot of persuasion for my wife to move back to there.
Wanting to get back home.
Yeah, and in Indianapolis there was talk. I actually did propose to my wife when we were still in Indianapolis. We didn't set a date, but I did finally propose to her, gave her a ring, but we had not set a date. We decided to move back, and Fairbury was going to be the place. We knew we wanted to raise a family, and I think that probably pointed us a lot in the direction to come back closer to home, because I knew if we were going to raise kids, I wanted it to be in a smaller town, and she did too, and we were both going to be a little bit closer to our parents and people that we know, people that we grew up with. So,
well, in Hoopston's an hour-ish from Fairbury?
Yeah, about an hour.
Right?
Yeah, and that's, not far from Danville where she went to school. And her parents at the time when she was going to school, had moved from Hoopston to Danville.
Oh.
Her dad worked for Union Pacific Railroad. He was pretty high up on there. So he kind of could be in a central location and still work, remotely. So it worked out pretty good for us. Now, my wife would probably tell you different to this day that, I took her away from her family. And but, so that was the decision to move back. And once we moved back, I actually went to work for a little bit bigger landscape company in Bloomington Normal.
So at that point, you get into a bigger landscape company, and how long are you there for? If I remember right, is this going to be Greenview then? Is that?
This was actually, I did a shorter stint with Sunburst Nursery and Penn Landscaping.
Okay.
I was got hired on as a sales consultant there, and I wasn't there very long, maybe a year and a half, maybe 2 at the most. And then a position came open with Greenview Companies, where I ultimately ended up landing probably my first, what I would call, really good job. It paid well, it had some good benefits, the salary was good, company truck, and I was in sales, which is what I learned I was really good at. Even working out in the field where sales has nothing to do when you're working on a golf course and stuff. Sales, there's no ties to anything.
If they're coming to the golf course, you don't.
I don't need to tell them to sell them to come to the golf course, So, but I always had a gift for gab, as you do too, And you either have that distilled in you or you don't,
right.
But I always did. So, sales to me came very easy, and I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed working with customers, and I loved being in the field, working in the field, but I didn't miss it all that much to where, hey, this is a little bit better. It's an office job, a desk, a truck. I manage jobs. I do bids. I do proposals. I order materials, and I run a crew, So I worked Greenview was at the time probably one of the larger landscape firms in Illinois. They had 5 locations at that time. I was working out of their Bloomington Normal branch. They were headquartered out of Dunlap in the Peoria area. Mm-hmm. But then they had a location, Bloomington Normal, Champaign, Oswego, and Springfield. So, and then their corporate in Dunlap. Big operation, sod farm, tree farm, garden centers, sales. It was a big design build company, and ran by the Hare family. Great family to work for. And I was with them for, I want to say, close to 12 years. Mm-hmm. The last 5 of those years, I actually had transferred to the Champaign location and was managing the Champaign branch.
Nice.
When another opportunity came across my plate.
And I know this next opportunity, but at the same time, this is kind of where I wanted to go, and I think this next circumstance in your life, this next event in your life, led you to a lot of other things. Okay, so at a certain point, I don't know when this falls, but you have a son, and this son has cerebral palsy.
Yes.
Okay, and I believe Gavin, is that correct?
That is, yeah.
So you have Gavin, and at this point, so much for you changes. And that's because now you shift. Your life has to change because of, nothing's wrong with it, but a special circumstance that now is on your plate, and you go, kind of take a deep breath, I'm sure, and go, now what? So at what point does that happen, and what is your mindset and realization? And, there's a lot of emotions there, I'm sure, too, between yourself and your wife. What is that event like for you?
So let's see. Gavin was born in 2004.
Okay.
And I was, at the time, I would have still been, let's see, I was still with Greenview at the time when Gavin was born. And he's the youngest of three boys that I have. I have a 26-year-old, a 21-year-old, and Gavin is 20. So believe that. But when Gavin was born, my wife was still working through the first two pregnancies of our oldest boys. She went part-time when we had Riley, our middle son. Once he was old enough to go to daycare or caregiver, she went back to work full-time. Once Gavin was born, she went back part-time then. But as Gavin grew, and we're talking like in the first year of his development, we knew something was kind of off there. Mm-hmm. When he was born very premature. Okay. 2 pounds, 14 ounces when he was born. Wow. So we knew there could be some complications. But at that stage, the doctors really don't even know, But my wife had, and I don't know if I'm going to pronounce this correct or not, placenta previa, I believe is what she had, that caused his premature birth. We thought she was going to be bedridden for the last 3 months of her pregnancy. Wow. And God had a different outcome for that, because the very next day, her blood clot broke, and they had to do an emergency C-section and take the baby at that time. He was then life-flighted immediately. Matter of fact, I got the call. I was at a soccer game with my oldest. I got the call from the nurse at the hospital saying, this has happened. We've rushed your wife into ICU. She's in surgery right now. We're doing an emergency C-section. Get here when you can. You don't need to hurry. She's fine. Everybody's fine. Everything's going to be fine. Of course, you never think that as a father. Right. So,
because I'm sure, like, you're at the game, and so cell phones are just kind of coming about. Is that right?
Yeah, they're not. It's not like technology now where you have smartphones, and you can find anything you want. A cell phone back then was basically a cell phone. You made phone calls on it. So I started thinking, okay, who can I call? So I immediately, the first name that popped in my head was one of our real close friends that kind of had grown up with us. I immediately called them. They were like, yeah, we'll be out there in a second. We've got your boys. You go do what you got to do. I got to the hospital and came in the emergency entrance, asked the lady there, I'm like, where's emergency room, blah, blah, blah. She's like, down the hall and to your left. And I went through the emergency doors, took a right, headed down the hallway, and I met my son for the first time coming with life flight. Oh, wow. He was in, I don't know if you want to call it an incubator or,
I think that actually is the...
Yeah.
So is this like Bloomington Hospital then?
Yeah, this is Broman. At the time, it's Broman. It's Carl.
It's Carl now.
Yeah, yep. So that was the first time I got to meet my son.
Wow.
Just a few brief moments. The pilot stopped. They let me look at him, have a few minutes with him. And away he went. They flew him off to Peoria Children's Hospital.
Because there's a lot of emotions there.
You can't even imagine.
From the first phone call of, hey, everything's fine, but your wife's in ICU, and we're having emergency surgery right now. Right. Your son's not supposed to be here for 3 more months. This. So you're processing this. Then you have to try and call, right? Then you're driving, and so are you driving from like Fairbury to Bloomington?
Yes. Yep.
So that's just the point of the drive.
Oh yeah,
too,
it's like, just the flood of emotions, because we go from all the trauma we just went through in the last 2 days with my wife, we had to call the ambulance, and she had to be taken by ambulance to the hospital. And, I left the hospital the day before thinking, okay, everything's going to be okay, but this is going to be a long 3 months if she's going to be bedridden.
Right.
I'm going to have to take care of these other 2 kids and everything else. So there was a lot of emotions going on already in my head. And then for this to happen, and, God has a funny way of only giving you as much as you can handle. I know we've all heard that phrase before, but I'm telling you, Jake, at that time, I wasn't sure, how I was going to process, how I was going to handle this. I mean, it was just a whirlwind of emotion. So, but, I knew my main concern was Gavin and my wife,
right.
Because my wife's in hot water too. I mean, it's no easy journey for her. I mean, things could have went south very quickly, and we could have lost one or both.
That exactly. That was my next thought. It's like things go a little different there, and
it could be a totally different outcome. We might not be having this conversation,
right. Exactly.
And, I mean, thankfully, my wife was fine. We had a great team of doctors. So away they go with Gavin to Peoria Children's Hospital. And this would have been in the fall. It was, I'm going to guess, mid-fall probably. Gavin was in the NICU for almost 3 months.
Wow.
So, me and my wife made house at times from week to week in Peoria. We'd drive back and forth a lot. It wasn't affordable for us at that time to just stay, in Peoria for 3 months. Right. I mean, I still needed to work, and we still needed money coming in. And it was more so get my wife's health back, and then so she can provide for, of course, Gavin and having, I can't imagine what was going through her mind, having your baby taken away from you immediately,
right?
And you don't get to see him.
And surely, I can only imagine her emotions too. That like she's probably almost out of it, not even really coherent as to completely what's
really going on.
And so I gotta ask too, at what point does she get out of the hospital at Bloomington? Because I'm sure there's a difference there where she's in the hospital. I'm sure for. What,
I think it was 3 days she was in the hospital before they let her come home, So, of course, we didn't really go home. When she got released from the hospital, I think we went straight to Peoria at that time. And I think we stayed there for a few days, before I think I finally convinced her. I said, hey, you know what? You need to go home. You need to go home, relax,
detach for a
unwind. Second. Yeah, just distance yourself from, I know you want to be here, but, and it's, as a parent, you'll understand that one day too. But, the biggest blessing we had that year is we were rolling up on Christmas, and Gavin's still, in Peoria, and we're just like, God, if we could just have one wish God would give us for Christmas would be for Gavin to come home. Gavin came home 2 days before Christmas.
Wow.
So I'll never forget that day that he came home. What a blessing it was for both of us. Unfortunately, it was pretty short-lived. I think he was home a couple weeks and ended up having some complications, ended up back at the Children's Hospital, I think, for about 2 more weeks. And that really was the start of the roller coaster ride of where we're at now.
Mm-hmm. So, that is tough, and not discredit any of that, but so you get out of the hospital, you get out of this, these first 4 or 5 months of just taking a breath, and now do things start to settle at any point? And that 5-6 month point in where you can go, okay, Gavin comes home, for a little bit of a moment you can breathe and go, okay, we're all right.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that probably was about in that time frame when he was probably 5 or 6. We still really, at that age with a newborn, 5, 6 months old, you're expecting certain things, you know, and we're not really seeing those. So there's obviously some concern. I mean, obviously there was concern from the very get-go just from his premature birth, but everything seemed fine. I mean, he ate well, he slept well, he wasn't a real hard baby to raise. So, you know, we went back for our weekly checkups at first, and then it was monthly checkups. And I think it was about when he was probably 8 or 9 months that we knew something's not right. You know, he should be, if not crawling by now, starting to crawl, attempting to crawl, and we just weren't seeing the development like that. And we could tell by his muscle moves and his fine motor skills that something was off. So
at that point, so you're working still. Your wife's back to work, is that correct?
She had not gone back to work yet. Okay. Yeah, after Gavin, she pretty much, to be honest, Jake, I don't know if she ever did go back to work even part-time after Gavin was born. Yeah. So
you get into this year point now, just about, and you know, right? So jump back, because I don't know exactly when it is, right? But there has to be a day at a certain checkup that the news hits that now you in stone, in writing, you go, okay,
our whole world's about to change.
Now we know.
Yeah.
What's that day like?
I want to say he was probably around 9 or 10 months old that, you know, we were going down to see a specialist. And when, you know, they tell you your newborn needs to see a specialist, we kind of knew, you know, the direction this was going to go. So I think it was around 9 or 10 months old that they finally officially said, hey, you know, your son is showing a lot of signs of cerebral palsy, along with spastic diplegia, which is like tightening of the muscles.
Okay.
And we could kind of see that, just his reactions as a newborn, when we had been through that with 2 others. So we knew what to expect and what was right, what was wrong. So that was crushing news. Absolutely crushing. I think it crushed my wife way more than it did me.
Even though it was kind of not a soft hit is way discrediting, because you kind of have an idea going in.
Yeah,
like, it's not just a huge brick wall, but still,
right.
That news, I can only imagine, is just like kind of puts you back in your chair for a second, and you just you go, oh wow, like.
You can prepare yourself, you know, as much as you want to, mindset wise. But when it's finally told, you know, you just keep hope, you know, thinking, it's, you know, he's just delayed. You know, everything's going to be fine. He's going to be just like the other 2, you know, healthy, running around, playing sports and going to school. And you know, it was, when we got the news and they officially determined that, you know, he does have a certain stage, and there's different stages of cerebral palsy. You know, there's very minor states of cerebral palsy to full-blown, you know, stage 5, which being the worst state of cerebral palsy, meaning you have no function of your muscles, you can't feed yourself, you can't drink, you can't change yourself, you can't care for yourself at all, nonverbal, can't walk. You don't know a lot of these things when your son is that young. You know, all the doctors can tell you is, we just need to wait. You know, we need to see how he develops. But, you know, in your mind as a parent, you can already see the writing on the wall. You just, you know, you just kind of put everything in God's hands, and you go, you know what? Just make sure he's healthy. You know, just make sure we'll deal with all the other problems, complications that come with that disease when we need to. But let's, for God's sake, just, I hope he's going to be healthy.
Give us at least a baseline.
Yeah, a little bit
able to maintain. A little
exactly.
Bit,
yeah, a little glimmer of hope. You know, saying, even if it's something as simple as, hey, he's got pretty good fine motor skills with his hands and stuff like that, because cerebral palsy affects a lot of your muscle tone.
Okay.
Not only your brain, function, but a lot of muscle tone is affected by cerebral palsy. Once we knew the diagnosis with him, and you kind of take that all in, and I don't know how many days or weeks or months it was before you accept it, but it was a long, long time before you really accept that, is this how our life is going to be now?
You have to let it, I don't know, you have to let it kind of become your way of life, and then you accept it and go, okay, this is me now.
That's right.
And
that's exactly right.
Like you mentioned, so I remember you saying this when we talked, before this podcast, of your wife never did go back to work. So her life changes quite a bit. Now you're the source of income for the family at this point. And so you would be, are you driving to Champaign now? Is this where your life's at, right?
Yeah.
So you're commuting, you're at Greenview, and I remember you saying the writing on the wall at Greenview too was like, this company's like, ooh, where
it's not going in a good direction.
And so now you have personal plus business life, and you go, where am I going to go next?
Right. Yeah.
So at that point, your mindset has to be just, okay, like you have to balance both.
Yes.
Just you have to.
Yeah.
But when you're at Greenview, knowing this job's not too much longer, it's just not.
Yeah.
But I have to have something that is to a certain level, and I'm sure medical bills, things like that, they're coming. Regular life is also on top of you there too.
Never stops.
Right.
I mean, life continues to go.
So at that point, what does that look like? Because you're at a point there where you got to make a decision, and it's one that maybe, when you were moving around a little bit before, you could just make those decisions. And
Absolutely.
Like, it could kind of be okay if it didn't work.
That's right. Yeah.
And now,
if it doesn't work, we'll try something different,
And now it needs to work.
This was definitely the first major crossroad, I would say, that me and my wife came to, that, some major decisions needed to be made. And about that time, I actually, I didn't even get a call. It was some close friends of ours that we kind of used to hang around with and go out with as couples. There was 4 or 5 of us couples that kind of hung together and did a lot of stuff together. Went to school with this one particular gentleman, and he had worked for Stein Seed Company since he graduated high school. So he had already been with Stein for, probably, close to 20 years at that time. One night on, a night out that we rarely got, but a night out that we were all together, we ended up back at his place, and, 12, 15 beers later, you start talking about nonsense or stupid stuff. And I remember him that night mentioning, hey, are you happy where you're at? And I thought that was kind of a weird question, when we're, knee deep in alcohol and, about ready to call it a night. And I don't quite remember exactly what my response was, but, I remembered him saying that for whatever reason. And I don't know, a week went by, 2 weeks went by, and me and my wife were discussing that conversation. And I had told her, hey, Clint had mentioned this to me the night we were all out. I'm like, I wonder if I should follow up with him. So I did. And lo and behold, it turned out that they were in the process, Stein as a company was in the process of looking for a new regional manager for the Illinois territory. And it was like heaven sent. I could see where Greenview was going at the time, although I just loved working for Greenview. I loved the people that owned the company, Tom and Mike Hare. But I could see the writing on the wall. And he approaches me and says, hey, here's what it details. Now, the only drawback is, there's some travel, there's some time away from home, but you also have a lot of time to make your own schedule too. But it's a big responsibility. But, with big responsibilities comes a bigger salary. And this was, we're talking a lot more than what I was currently making. So, whether I was wanting to do it or not, just as a father, as a husband, financially, it was the best decision we had. With my wife not being able to go back to work, and I just couldn't pass it up. And so, all these years of working in the horticulture field, now I'm considering to jump ship to go into the ag field. Now, not a huge difference between the two, but definitely not something I grew up around.
Right.
So
at this point, and I think this is true today, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, Stein has at least an office, though, in Fairbury, correct?
They do not. Stein is headquartered in Adel, Iowa.
Okay.
That's where the corporate office, that's where it was founded. That's where it still is today. It is the largest independent seed company in the world.
But did they at one point have any offices?
They did not.
Huh.
All of Stein's employees, unless you worked in Adel at the corporate office, everything was remote throughout the Midwest.
Because I know a couple of names that work for Stein, and
which
that's where
the individual that approached me lived in Fairbury, and he did have an office in Fairbury, downtown Fairbury, and he was. Oh, God, I think he's general manager now with Stein. But at the time, he was like a director of sales. And the position I was applying for was regional sales agronomist.
It's a big one.
Yeah, it's a big one. I don't know anything about agronomy. I can tell you anything in my sleep about horticulture, but I don't know anything about agronomy. But, everything's a learning curve. You got to learn. That's how you learn. So, anyhow, long story short, I took the position. I was with Stein for, I think, around 5 years. And it was a lot of travel. It was a lot away from home. And, of course, my son's not getting any younger. His complications are becoming compounded because of how old he's starting to get. And there came a time where I had to step down from the RSA position and be just a district sales manager with Stein, which was an independent contractor. So I had way more freedom now. I didn't have a territory that I had to run around in. I wasn't gone for days at a time, because my territory was huge when I was RSA. It was all of northern Illinois, all of southern central Wisconsin.
So you're not going to central Wisconsin and coming back, and you're making a trip out of it.
Absolutely, I may be gone for 3 or 4 days, And when Gavin was young and my wife could pick him up and care for him, it wasn't as big of a deal. But as he grew, got bigger, got heavier, had more responsibilities that he needed, there came a time that I had to make a decision. I really did, and the district sales manager, I didn't like it as much as the RSA position. And, I don't think I never really felt 100% comfortable in the agronomy side of work as I did as the horticulture.
You didn't quite have that background knowledge enough.
Exactly, to be confident enough that, I knew what I was talking about, and I was 100% confident I could sell you those beans or I could sell you those corns. Now, you give me a landscape plan, I'll definitely have you signing the contract before we walk out, So I think that was a little bit intimidation from that. And, I had still, to that point, was landscaping on the side, kind of day, moonlighting, landscaping on the weekend. So I was still working 7 days a week. Even when I was working with Stein, I was still working on the weekends, doing side jobs. I mean, I didn't go look for the work. It just found me. People knew I did it. And at that time, that was when I had to make, we were at another crossroads in our life. Yeah.
So the product of that is Elite Outdoors.
That's
right?
correct. Yes. Yep.
But so I got to ask too, does Gavin's condition, you mentioned, different stages of that. Is that something that can develop over time to where it worsens, or is once you kind of land in a certain stage, that's kind of where you stay? Or again, say, I don't know, but say maybe he's stage 3. Is there a chance he goes stage 4, stage 5, or does he stay in that stage 3 area?
That's a good question, and that's probably one question that a lot of people would like to know. How does one, what are the stages of cerebral palsy, and can it become worse from what they originally had as they grow older? And I would tell you that yes, it can. Will it become a lot worse? No, I think a lot of the damage from cerebral palsy is done from the initial birthing state. It's not something that, say, you're born a healthy child and you develop cerebral palsy. That's not how it works. It's generally 98% of the time it is from birth, of how you develop that. Now, knowing the stage of cerebral palsy, that takes quite a long time before you really kind of know where your son is at with that. And I would tell you from a rating that our Gavin is probably a 3.5, 3.5 to 4. He is nonverbal. He cannot crawl or walk. He cannot feed himself. Now, he does have some fine motor skills as far as being able to use his hands. He can hold a bottle. He knows enough that he can drink his bottle, but he can't hold a spoon, feed himself. A lot of his feedings are done at nighttime through a button in his stomach that we provide through a G-tube and give him nighttime feedings, his medications, stuff like that. And, I know we could get into a whole show of, what that is like, and how that is. But he did develop some other symptoms as he got older. I think at 6 or 7, he had to have major hip surgery just because cerebral palsy, it affects your muscles. And when your muscles are affected, it can affect your posture or your positioning or your mindset or your fine motor skills. Without getting into great detail, he went through a couple really tough stints there as a young boy in that 7-year to 12-year-old in there. He had a major hip surgery that really set him back. And during that time frame, he developed Crohn's disease, which that's kind of a whole nother story in itself. Right. I mean, that was a very, very scary situation. 2 weeks without knowing what's wrong with our son. He's in, emergency care. Nobody can seem to diagnose what's wrong with him. And thank God, Dr. Eusine, we'll never forget Dr. Eusine, finally was the doctor that diagnosed him with Crohn's. And I don't know how much you know about Crohn's, but it's an awful disease. It's a gastro disease that affects a lot of those organs, and you just have no control over it. And when it affects a child with cerebral palsy that can't communicate with you to tell you what's wrong, it's even worse, to diagnose those symptoms. So he develops Crohn's disease. He spends a couple weeks in the hospital trying to figure that out. We get that under control. He's lived with that now. He's 20. He's lived with that since he was diagnosed with that. We keep that under control through a Humira pen that I give him a shot every week. Along the way of that developing, he also developed Barrett's esophagus, which is... It develops from acid reflux, which is common with children with cerebral palsy. So what ends up happening is that acid reflux that comes up through the stomach ends up burning the esophagus. That can also lead to lesions that can lead to cancer. Wow. So it's something you really got to stay on top of. So we weren't sure what was going on. Was having real bad acid reflux, not sleeping, grouchy, Took a while for them to figure that out, but they finally got that figured out. We got medicine, we got that under control, but it's something that he'll live with the rest of his life, and it's something we have to monitor very closely. Colonoscopies once a year, endoscopes every 6 months, and he seems... We have that kind of in remission right now, which is really good. That's a positive thing for him. And now we've just found out that there's some new medications now that can possibly cure Barrett's esophagus, because it's not something that can really be cured. It's just something you have to keep in check, kind of like Crohn's. So we've got those medicines that were given to him, and he's getting older and he's becoming a teenager now. But the cool thing is when he was old enough to go to school, he's gone to school. And it is really cool that, we're so fortunate that Prairie Central has special education teachers there, special aides to help with, kids with autism, kids with special needs, and their focus is just with those kids. And Gavin actually 2 years ago graduated from Prairie Central with his class.
That's awesome.
That he was supposed to graduate with when he turned 18. And the cool thing about Illinois, one of the only cool things about Illinois, but is the education system allows a special needs child to go to school up until they're 21. So he is currently still in school, but he has not been to school in the last year at all, just from some health issues. The hip surgery I mentioned that he had done at 7 or 8 years old, he had to have that done again about 5 years ago because his bones grow as he got older. His hips became unaligned again, so he had to go through that major surgery again. Well, now our next hurdle, we've come to our next hurdle, which is not uncommon for kids with cerebral palsy, but he's developed scoliosis, which is curvature of the spine. Very common with kids with cerebral palsy. So we've been dealing with that now for about 2 years. We tried some different things of, bracing and doing some different things with his chair and to try to see if we could correct it without surgery. But we're at that point now. And the surgeon told us his CP team is down in Children's Hospital St. Louis.
I was going to bring that up. I remember you saying on the phone that you have to make a lot of trips to St. Louis.
We do,
and, that takes a toll as well. I know you mentioned some of that surgery for the scoliosis has kind of been bumped around and moved, and that's something tough to deal with, and something else. And I know that this is gonna be a deep one, Chuck. But I gotta know too. Like you said, Gavin's nonverbal. Now you have had communication with 2 sons prior to this, right?
Right.
And I have to ask, was it tough to know? That those conversations, that interaction that you've had prior, you're not going to have that with Gavin. But I think it's not to discredit that there's a special circumstance there, and maybe you may not have communication like you did with Riley. Did you say Hayden? Is that right?
Yes. Yep.
Riley and Hayden. But now you have a communication with Gavin that's just unique.
It is,
but it's still.
Yes.
It's still tough.
Very,
is it not?
Yeah, very, very tough. And that you're exactly right. It's a different bond you have with a special needs son when you have 2 perfectly healthy sons, that can communicate with you on a day-to-day basis like you do with your father or, anybody else would. And I think coming to terms yourself, you have to come to terms yourself with cerebral palsy and how it will affect your life and your livelihood and your other family members. At some point, you have to come to grips with that. And that it was easier for me to do than it was for my wife to do. But I thank God every day that our son has a mother like my wife, because she is a warrior. I mean, an absolute warrior. She has gone to bat for that child. I don't know where she finds the energy to do it, quite honestly. I mean, the mountain of phone calls, doctors, medications, fighting with insurance, fighting with the state, we need this. We have to have this. No, we're not paying for that. You're paying for that. I don't know how she's done it for 20 years, but everything he's had, all the care he's gotten, the doctors, the specialized doctors, his team of CP doctors down in St. Louis, and we're on I think this is the 4th cerebral palsy specialist that we're on now since we've been going down there. And the very first one we had when we went down there, she had cerebral palsy herself, and she was amazing. Wow. Absolutely amazing. And she really set the course for the direction that our son was on for his care. And unfortunately, she left. She moved back to Texas where she was from. She opened up a CP clinic there for kids, and, good for her. Was bad for us, and, not to knock any doctors or anything, because they're all, they're a special kind of person, they take care of all of us. But we've never gotten the care since then like we did with her. And it's constantly changing and evolving. And, I don't know, but it really is the bond that you have with a special needs child is so much different than it's hard to explain. You wouldn't understand. He wouldn't understand. They wouldn't understand. But like you said, he can't communicate with us, and you're right, he can't.
But at the same time, he kind of does.
He does. You're right. In his own way, as parents, as mom and dad. Now, our friends come over. He may be acting out or doing what he does on a regular basis. Mm-hmm. We know what he's doing or what he's trying to tell us to a certain extent. Mm-hmm. Now, we don't know everything. If we did, it would be so much easier.
Right.
But for the average person to walk in, they want to turn around and walk right back out. They really do.
It's foreign. It's so foreign that it's just
so foreign. Yeah.
Now, I would be remiss too. You talked about Prairie Central having a nice special needs program and it taking special people to do that, right? I have a friend of mine who she's wanting to go. She has a family with special needs background, and she wants to go into that field. She wants to be that preschool or early teacher that way she can kind of give back to to that. And admittedly, her family is, a lot of it has special needs. She doesn't. So kind of that versus one person in your family having it.
Right.
It's almost kind of the opposite in some senses. So she's very strong about it. And I talked to her a little bit before this podcast, just go like, hey, what do you think? What do you have some thoughts on? But going back to Pontiac, they have a special needs program there. I know Pam Sawyer, Heather Christensen, I believe her name was Laura Baumgardner, I believe, for a long while. Her son went through the program. The Respect campaigns, they would do that a ton. There for a while, we had Special Olympics basketball that was going pretty heavily.
Awesome.
We, I want to say, they go in stints of like X amount of years. I want to say 2 years ago, because I believe Gary Bruner was our AD still at the time. I think you probably have heard the name from Gary before. He does some work at Wolf Creek, I believe. Which
I think you're right. Yeah.
I have a golf story from Wolf Creek. I may have a driver in the pond off like hole 7.
And everybody else.
It's a really funny story, actually. But we are a banner school, or at least were, where I should know this, but I want to say Special Olympics has to do with that, and just that whole organization of the special needs, just how much Pontiac has done with it. That was something really cool during my time there, to know that like they really were, and I say they, but like that program, right? You have those kids that range from completely nonverbal and kind of similar to Gavin, to where you still have kids that are in the realm of just maybe like ADHD. They're too, they can't really function.
Right.
They are like, you'd pass them on the street and you wouldn't think anything, but maybe there's some still developmental issues or something like that. Yeah. So it was an A to Z range. I got close with a couple of them. Actually, there was one gentleman. His name's Matthew, I believe, or no, maybe it's Adam. I think it's Adam. I think I got it wrong, but yeah, it was Adam. Oh man, what's Adam's last name? I knew it too, but actually, him and his dad go to the races, and so he had recognized me, and and I'm not saying this to toot a horn or anything, but I was able to talk to, I believe it was Pam Sawyer. Pam, she watches a ton of Kent Caston stuff with the Island Central Illinois. She tunes in a ton. Those people are just special people, and we grew a connection.
They absolutely are. Yes.
And Pam and I grew a connection, and I had knew Adam's kind of background. I mean, I really hope it's Adam, but I knew that, and I'd recognized him at the races. I believe that they sat on the front stretch at the grandstands, I believe, and I'm like, okay, Pam, get me his shirt size, please. Like I wanted to give back the best I could.
That's cool.
So we got one of our shirts in, one of our newer shirts, and I tell you what, the day that I was able to give it to him, like it honestly, like his smile, and it was like you just gave him $1 million.
Absolutely.
And it was one of those things where
what it means to a child like that is so much more than to the average child.
He was so just thankful, grateful. Like I got the biggest hug that day ever. I mean, and every time he wore it after, this was probably the cooler part. Every time he would wear it after that, and we'd cross paths in the hallway, the smile ear to ear. He was like, "Hey, look what I got!" And I'm just like, "Man, that's
the little things, It's the little things you take for granted sometimes, and with autism as bad as I guess I don't have a real clear answer on that, and probably is why we're in the disposition that we are as health-wise as a country. But those little things like that to me and you don't mean squat, to somebody with those conditions, that could be life-changing. Mm-hmm. It really could be, especially to somebody that kind of understands you, Mm-hmm. Whereas, unfortunately with our son, I'm not saying he's not aware of his surroundings or aware of what's going on, because he certainly feels, sees, emotions. He has all that, we just don't know which one it will be on any certain day, what you're going to get. So there's so much more in depth to it.
There is. And like you said, we could do a whole nother couple hours. I mean, I think we're, damn near an hour and a half into this, but
yeah.
And like that was another thing is, and this is just like, it's not nature's not the right word, but it's just reality of like that section of Pontiac School, like you knew the section was there because there was noises. It was different.
Absolutely.
And unfortunately, some students, right, they don't understand.
No.
Right? And so that's...
And it's not
it's
not completely even students either. Right. There's full-grown adults that
just
completely don't understand. And I get that, and I'm never going to look down upon somebody that they haven't done their research.
Right.
If we didn't have a special needs child, I wouldn't be doing the research, Mm-hmm. You had mentioned something a while back in the interview about where this how this has affected our lives, And I think it's safe to say, pretty easy to say, that it is life-changing. I mean, everything that we had built up to that point and the vision we had of our future, just open up the kitchen window, throw that whole box of shit out the window, and you know what, Dave? Got to start over, okay? Our life now begins to what he needs. Right. Our life will evolve around what he needs. And for almost 20 years, that has been the direction that he has taken us, not the direction that we necessarily said we were going to go. Mm-hmm. And it's don't get me wrong. I don't want anybody to get me wrong that this has been the most miserable road anybody could go down, because it's absolutely has not been. It's been actually one of the biggest blessings, probably. not every parent out there is suitable to have a special needs or to care for a special needs child. Whether you feel you could do it or you couldn't do it, when it's put in front of you and you have no choice, brother, you better step up. You better do your research. You better figure out what's going to be best for him. You better figure out you're not when you don't have this to look at, you can live day to day. But for us, we have to really look to the future. I'm not getting younger.
Right.
He's not getting any younger. He's getting bigger. I'm not getting stronger. I'm 54 years old, but I still feel like I'm in pretty good shape. I work outside all the time. I still work with the crews a lot, and I try to keep myself in shape for him, But the reality is this, that there will come a time. There will come a time.
Yeah.
That's, I don't think you can say, 5 years from now, this is what we're going to do. You have to start that process now, knowing that's not what you want to think about, and you're not ready for that right now, but there will come a time that we won't be able to care for him. Yeah. You could sit there and he goes, how does that look for you, Chuck? I have no idea. No idea right now.
And
I know what our goal is. I know, and don't get me wrong, because we've started those preparations for our son, because that's as a special needs parent, that's what you do. So, but you just hold on to time, because there'll come a time where you're going to have to make probably the toughest decision you're ever going to make in your life. And whether that's 2 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, nobody knows that. But if you don't start that preparation now, you're going to be in for a real big surprise.
You get steamrolled.
Absolutely.
You just have to. You just got to take that time and cherish it and live day by day and just know that,
You're exactly right. You literally, everybody says that. Oh, you need to live your life day to day. I've never believed that, because I think you should have a clear view of where your future's taking you. If you want to meet goals and meet milestones and, be in the career that you want to be in and be happy, just be happy, that's not an option, that we have. We don't have those options anymore. That's not part of our game plan anymore. The biggest thing we're thankful for as a family is our two oldest sons. And now, and I just want to touch on this quickly. I don't want to get real in depth with it, but, our oldest is 26. Our middle one is 21. Our middle one just graduated college last year.
Okay.
Landed a good job with a good company. He's goal-oriented. He's real self-efficient. He's a go-getter, and he's just that image of the perfect son. And God, thank God, that he chose that path and went down that path. And has he helped with Gavin over the years? Absolutely. He absolutely has, because it's a family affair. It's not just me and my wife. I'm sorry, but you're part of this family. But for our oldest, and I have to share this because I actually just got the text as I was walking in for this show. And we had been working on this a while. So with Gavin, and part of course, we have, insurance for him, but then there's also some stuff that the state provides for special needs children.
Okay.
They don't come and tell you that they have these
benefits.
Benefits, or, these different avenues that you could get resources to. They will not. Nobody from the state comes knocking on your door saying, hey, we heard you have a special needs child. Have you heard about these programs we have or this money?
That's nice.
No. You as a parent, and that's where my wife comes in. you have to go down these dark avenues, these dark roads, and make some really shitty phone calls to people and have some really shitty conversations with people to get what you need.
You almost have to, I can assume, you almost have to plead your case and go.
You do, and it's sad that our world's that way. Yeah. Well, for instance, so we had to go in front of a judge to hire a lawyer, okay, $1,500 for a lawyer that I hired, and go in front of a judge for the judge to tell us that we are his legal guardians when he turned 18. We are officially now his legal guardians on paper. If we didn't do that, we would have no representation for our child once he turned 18, meaning all his medications, all his doctor's information, all his surgeries, procedures, everything would be non-accessible to us once he turned 18.
Wow.
Is that the stupidest? That's part of the problem with our healthcare in this country. That we as parents that raise this child from born to 18 years old through everything we've been through, we have to come in front of a judge to tell you that we're his legal guardians? Come on. Is that not the stupidest thing you've ever heard?
I'm speechless, honestly.
But
that's crazy.
That's just part of it. But so the story I was getting at, the text I received just before I walked in. So we have been working with 3 different agencies for the last 3 years to find a aide that will come to the house specifically for Gavin, to meet Gavin's needs, whether that's feeding, bathing, caring for, running to appointments, whatever it may be. Once they get 18, you have that option to search that out. 3 years, 3 different agencies. Not one person has stepped up to say, you know what? I want to take care of that child. That's the job I want to have. I'm a certified RN, or I'm a certified provider. And the state's going to pay this person $45 some an hour to come take care of our child. And 3 years we didn't get one person apply.
I gotta wonder,
for this job.
Why?
Does that tell you another crisis that we have in our healthcare?
Yeah, that's.
I mean, we could get off on healthcare on a whole nother show if we want to. But
that's a two-way, because those who are getting into healthcare want to help people. Right, you would think, and
that's kind of what our vision is. Right? Yes, absolutely.
And I gotta wonder too. And this is just the reality: $45 an hour to help people that you signed up like that.
That's what you signed up for.
Why did
that's
it take
right.
3 years?
Yeah. So we still have not found anybody. So of course, me and my wife, we try to keep ourselves fairly up to date on new laws. New bylaws, new programs that the state has put in place. Because I'm going to tell you right now, I don't care how good of insurance you have, it's never going to be enough with the special needs child. You need help from the state. I'm telling you right now, if there's any parents out there with special needs childs that are just getting into this, nobody's going to, like I said, nobody's going to call you or come knocking on your door and saying, hey, here's all these programs and all this money that's available to you. But you need to do this, and this. Nobody does that. You have to find those resources. So, we try to stay up to date on the new programs that Illinois offers, the new grants or money that's available out there for special needs child. So last year we attended a 2-day seminar in Bloomington Normal for all it was to keep special needs parents up to date on the new laws and programs that Illinois is introducing in 2024 and 2025. And one of those was the state now would allow a family member, qualified family member, to officially, through the state, become licensed officially through the state to become his primary caregiver. So, who would that be? So our oldest son Hayden, who's the 26-year-old son, he's always been our biggest help with Hayden, or with Gavin. He's always been our biggest help with Gavin. Huge, huge help. You know, our middle went on his own. He's got his career path, and good for him. But we told both of our oldest sons, anything that happens with Gavin, do not let it hold you back from what your goals are. Do not think that you're obligated to stay here and to help care for this child, because you're not. We want you to spread your wings. We want you to go do what you want to do and live your life, and hopefully it's as gold as you picture it in your head, you know. But for some reason, my oldest always, his bond with Gavin was always pretty strong from the very get-go. And I got the text before I came in that he got all his paperwork back to be Gavin's primary caregiver.
That's awesome.
So
that's amazing.
Yeah, that's 3 years we've been fighting to try to find that special person. And it was going to take a special person, you know, because, I mean, he's 115 pounds of dead weight. Some little RN can't come into our house and expect to care for him if you can't pick him up and carry him around, you know. So that had to be tough for my oldest son. That for a 26-year-old to have all that put on him. And like I said, we never pushed him this direction. We always told him, you spread your wings, you go do what you want to do. But we always could tell deep down inside that there was something that was keeping him close to home.
Keep him grounded, keep him back.
Yeah. And now, if he decides in 2 or 3 years that, you know what, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go do what I want to do. We're going to be nothing but high praises for him to do that, you know. But for him to officially become, I mean, to where he's getting paid now. He will get paid. This is his full-time job now, and he gets to stay at home. You know, I mean, what better deal is that? I mean, of course, spend one day at our house, and you would realize that it's not a normal one day at a house. But so, I mean, that's probably some of the greatest news we've received in a long time.
He gets to help his brother, and I mean, that's obviously the biggest thing. He gets obviously to be able to make that a very sustainable job. And he still gets to stay home and help his brother. I mean, and like you mentioned, it does seem like he has a special connection.
He does, you know,
So,
and he always did. We always knew that from a long time ago. We knew our middle one, Riley. I mean, he was just, you know, come and go. Yeah, I'll help if you ask me. But, you know, it takes a special person to kind of just on your own
decide
that, you know what, I need to help. I need to help with this, you know.
And I don't want to get away. I know we've been detached for this for probably 15 minutes now, but you know, you talk about special people again, and you know, I don't want the notation too to be that, you know, all Pontiac was judgmental on that program, because that was a select few, but we had
right.
That whole a lot of that school was very, very inclusive to those with special needs, and I think that holds true to a lot of places. Honestly.
Absolutely.
I don't know what Prairie Central's situation is, obviously, but I'm sure it's, from what it sounds like, they're also on that same track.
Yes.
And so I got to ask too. You know, we're kind of gonna get away from Gavin a little bit, not to discredit it,
for sure.
but you know, I also want to kind of touch on a couple other things here. The town of Fairbury, at least for me, I'm not from there, obviously. I'm from 10 miles away. Spent a lot of time in Fairbury with the racetrack.
Absolutely.
But not there day to day. But a lot of people I've met from there and so on and so forth have always been good people.
Yes.
And
I agree.
You know, you come back home and you have this special circumstance. Has the community... Now, I know you mentioned there's maybe not even a ton of people that know your circumstance with this. However, has Fairbury always been that small town that has been helpful to your neighbor type of town? Did you have struggles within, you know, with your situation? What was that like?
Our community has been nothing but tremendous for Gavin. It's amazing the amount of people that know Gavin know his story, know our story. And obviously the people that are close to us, know the whole background, the whole story from the beginning. Not too many know everything about our situation, but I think as a whole, the community, I couldn't, quite honestly, I couldn't ask for better people, as far as just friends of the family, teachers. He is so loved in our school district. I mean, from elementary to junior high to high school, I think all age divisions know Gavin. They know who he is. They know his condition, and people that I don't even know really close, have reached out before. So the support that we've gotten from the community has been just outstanding.
That's really nice to hear.
It is.
And
it is.
The community, shifting gears here now, the community is also very, it seems like besides this last maybe school board or school election, there were some.
Yeah, well, we won't talk about that.
There were some things there that maybe tore that community up, but for
some division going on there.
Yeah, but for the most part, they're very supportive of a lot of things, and one of those being the Fairbury Speedway, which is where, to my understanding, is where we got connected. I'm not sure if maybe we were connected before that or not.
I don't think so. I think that I knew you were a student at at Pontiac High School.
Easy with those words. That gets you easy with those
but
words.
I think I knew who you were. I think before we physically met, which was at the racetrack.
Right.
Where I've met a ton of people that I didn't know before. That's a whole nother family in itself there.
Yes,
but I knew you were very active in, I don't want to say the whole broadcasting thing of Pontiac sports and, different avenues that you chose to be interactive with at that high school. Mm-hmm. But I knew who you were before I physically met you at the Speedway. But the Speedway, that's a whole different family there.
I've been around the Speedway, I think, I don't know, predating, use the right word to say, but before you hired on. Right.
Yeah. Yep.
And before you were regularly around, is that safe to say?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yep. I wasn't, hired
I think
on.
you were going there when you were just knee high to a grasshopper.
I think my
you?
first trip to Eldora was I was like 6 months old.
Nice.
So I've been I tell people now, it's like, man, I really don't watch racing all that often, and like this, that, and the other, and like I was having this conversation with someone, and it's like, well, he's probably burned out because
right.
I went almost 20 years. I'll be 20 in October, but 19 years of just every weekend. And there were some couple 2022, 2023. I mean, it was like 2-3 days a weekend on the road. There was some time I did a little street stock touring racing, kind of being a little crew guy, if you would. But I mean, hell, when you're like, there was that time where Fairbury was every weekend to Fairbury was like maybe once a month, because I was at Macon, a couple trips to Charleston, Farmer City, Kankakee. I was out, and that burns you out a little bit, and kind of makes you go,
it does.
Okay, I want to break, and I'm getting back into it a little more now, and racing at the racetrack. But like I was able to grow some relationships with Dustin Jarrett and Ben Shelton. I remember there's a picture of me and Ben on the front stretch. I want to say the first World of Outlaw PDC. So what, 2013, 2014, somewhere.
Yeah, mid 2000s.
That area, and there's a picture of us together. But so I had the Jake from State Farm get up. I don't know who or why or what got me into but I wore a red polo and khakis, and that resonated, and so I was Jake from State Farm for a lot of people. Again, don't know why, don't know how, but and I don't know how this completely came together either, but myself and my father really, I was just kind of along for the ride at this point, but started helping with hauler parking overnight at the PDC. So like Thursday night, rolling in, at least it used to be Thursday night. Now I think this last year we did like Monday, because the race on Tuesday or Wednesday.
we added the race on Wednesday.
So, it became, we were there all week to begin with before, but it was like, now it's like, oh, now it's really all week. But got connected with Matt a little bit, of course, and then Jonathan Clayton and the whole crew. But yeah, anyway, got in with that and like grew connections like with Billy Moyer Jr., Jimmy Owens, Rick Eggert. There was actually a stint where, I say stint, but a weekend I was able to go travel with. It was actually Alan Murray. Rick didn't race. He was there one night, but he didn't race for a couple of summer national races with Jason Quern, I believe is how you say Jason's last name.
Yeah.
Flip Flop. He worked for BMJ for a little bit, and then he went to work for Alan Murray, and Alan owned Rick's, I want to say the last like car that Rick drove owned would have been Alan's.
That sounds about right.
A couple of years ago,
Yeah.
before he went back to his own stuff and went local, but was able to actually like, I don't know if I was much for help, but went on the road with them, and but no, that was really cool. Anyway, grew a lot of connections, and one of those connections, of course, being yourself. But we, quite honestly, Chuck, I can't say before this podcast, we talked a ton. We crossed paths, and in those weekends that I did work for the racetrack, I mean, there was a couple that we've been just extra help for Matt and Jonathan, especially this last year with the modified race was a night.
Yeah, the Illinois shootout.
That was really cool because I actually, it was fun. Jonathan threw me a headset and I went and I worked the top side pit area up by the beer tent. And
yes.
They needed an extra body, and Chad Bazell and myself were kind of interchangeably working together for that deal, and that was fun. It's cool seeing it go full circle. Actually, I was supposed to announce at I've done some stuff at Farmer City the last few years announcing.
Right, yes.
And I was supposed to be there with P. Kitty, Patrick Davis, one night for, it would have been, is it Labor Day, right? I think it was a Mars weekend. It was Farmer City Fairbury, I think Spoon. So yeah, it probably would have been Labor Day. It rains out, and I'm like, man, that was going to be my flow debut to get on the mic at Flow.
It's going to be my big chance.
And that turned into, I sent Matt a text message that late that night, 10:30, 11, I think, just to like, hey, I didn't have this opportunity. Is there any way I can do anything with Mike tomorrow for the Hubert? Because I have street stock background knowledge. I was around that racing world for a couple of years, and I woke up to a text from Matt of like, hey, give me a call when you can. Let's set something up. And overnight, that was something cool. And
it's a big deal.
I need to text him again. I lost him a little bit with Speed Weeks, but I know I'm coming back for the Hubert this year to be able to work with Mike.
That's awesome. Always a great race too.
Yes,
love that race.
It really is. The streets, when you put them all together, they can put on a show. And but no, anyway, with connections and whatnot, you work your way in there, and you've met quite a few cool people with that. But I want to know, after talking about myself, I kind of got on a tangent there. Just realizing that I got on a tangent for no reason.
We need to know
context.
The backstory
to
the Speedway in your involvement.
Yes. So I'm connected. Chuck's connected. We both got connected, but you're connected a lot more regularly and actually directly to the Speedway as a member of the staff. How did that come together?
So, I think this is, of course, I've been with Matt since he purchased the Speedway, which I think, don't quote me on this, but I think he purchased the Speedway in 2019.
Yes.
Does that sound right?
That sounds right. Well, because his stint with the would have been.
I mean, he's always been involved with the Fairbury Speedway, except
but
for those few years that he went on tour with the World of Outlaws.
I think it was only 1 year.
It might have been.
I think it was.
Might have been
so
only
I think,
1 year with the
I want to
World of
say.
Outlaws.
Yeah, I bet 19.
So,
but anyway.
So I originally actually, of course, I've always been a dirt track race fan since a little boy. My lifestyle didn't revolve around racing. So, I was more sport oriented, played every sport I could play. And then, of course, I moved away for a while. And then when I did move back, there was other things going on. But I always loved it from the very first time that I stepped foot out there at the Speedway. But I seen when the Fairbury American Legion had the Speedway, so this would have been 2017, 2016 maybe. They posted a position for a marketing director. Okay. And I thought, that's weird because the Fairbury American Legion Speedway at the time, owned by the American Legion, is a nonprofit organization. of course, I knew the board members, almost all the board members I knew by first name.
Right, because they were all local.
Yeah,
to
most
my
everybody
understanding.
was local. The board president was actually a high school graduate, classmate of mine,
Okay.
Leroy Rodriguez. And I seen them post that, and I thought, and at the time I was working for Stein at the time. And I was, I believe, in the district sales manager's position. So I had a lot of, flexibility in my schedule. And I thought, I'm not saying I would love this position, but I'm interested. I'm curious. What does this involve? Marketing director. I've never seen them post this position, or, I've never heard anybody directly been called or titled, hey, this is so-and-so, he's our director of marketing. So they had this position open. I contacted Leroy and I said, are you guys still looking for somebody for this? He goes, yeah. He goes, why, are you interested? And I'm like, I'm kind of kicking around the idea. And he goes, well, come in, here's the next board meeting, come in, sit down, and we'll talk. And I went in for that board meeting, and had a good conversation with the board and everything. And the very next day, Leroy called me and said, hey, we've discussed it, and we think you're a good fit for the position. Would you want to take it on? And I'm like, awesome. Okay, this is cool.
So what did that look like? Because social media has boomed, don't get me wrong. But even in 2016, 2017, social media is nowhere near what it is right now.
Oh, God, no.
So,
no, absolutely not.
And marketing, I just had this conversation with one of my English teachers on an assignment, but like marketing isn't just social media.
Right.
I resonate that with social media just because of all of this. And like, to me, marketing is social based, but you don't think about flyers and posters and displays.
Right. There's a lot more to marketing than social media.
So,
I mean, if you are a director of marketing, the social media platform now is so much greater, than what we had at our, abilities back then. But, I was kind of surprised the way it kind of worked. My job duties basically detailed, okay, here's a list of companies and or individuals that support our track and or sponsor our track. Your job is you need to keep those people sponsoring our track and go find some new people to sponsor our track. Mm-hmm. That was basically, in a nutshell, what my position was. There was no set hours. I didn't have an office. I did things at my leisure and with just a little bit of direction from them. And once I got into the position, I was like, man, there's so much more here.
Right.
There's so much more that I see that,
the opportunity there is.
Yeah, the opportunity is so greater than what they portrayed it as. And I get it, because they never really had a position of director of marketing. They just kind of always did everything in-house. Well, I think they were at that point where we need to take that next step,
The tide was turning in a sense.
It was, yes. And maybe some new blood, a new face, that could only maybe make things better. And, for those 2 years that it was still owned by the American Legion, I absolutely fell in love with the place. I really did. And I put some different, I think I maybe took some of the burden off the board that they had, had to deal with for years and years and years. And I kind of took some of that responsibility on myself and made a few different changes, kind of sent some things in a different direction than I think maybe they were considering, but we're totally on board with it, and it kind of, one thing led to another. The next thing I know is, hey, what do we do for these sponsors that, are supporting our track and everything? And these sponsors, and, at the time we didn't, at that time we didn't have the Falls Cup,
right?
Where you had legitimate sponsors for every night. It was just the big nights of racing. You had big time sponsors, but,
right.
I always ask the question, well, caters to these sponsors? They're paying a lot of money to support this track. We should be supporting them and at least make them feel like they get the red carpet treatment.
Right.
And that was not something that they portrayed as part of my job or said, hey, you need to do this. It was just kind of something I felt we needed to do as a speedway, and that kind of has led to what a lot of my position is today.
The Jake Green Show is brought to you in part by Great Lakes Lifting Solutions. Great Lakes Lifting is the glass industry's toolbox. Looking for any model smart lift, wood power grip, or spider crane? Go to www.greatlakeslifting.com or call 815-931-4825. That's 815-931-4825. Offices in Illinois, Florida, and Texas. Great Lakes Lifting Solutions is a proud sponsor of The Jake Green Show.
If there's one thing I can say that holds true to Fairbury Speedway's success is the support of our community. Mm-hmm. If you do not have the support of the community backing what you're doing or what you're trying to do or what your goal is for Fairbury itself and the Speedway, I don't think you can ever be successful. No, and I think at some point your doors probably will close if the community doesn't rally around it.
Especially location. For those of you who don't know, Fairbury Speedway is, 5 feet from the nearest house?
I mean, it's smack dab in town,
it's literally, it's there.
People embrace it, though. I mean, that's the difference between, and I'm never going to talk bad about any track because they all have their struggles. Everybody says, oh man, you guys got it so good. Ed, you think that came overnight? You think that wasn't built years and years ago from people that aren't even at that track anymore?
Right. You go back to
where it is now. We're fortunate enough that, and I'll say this to anybody and I'll fight anybody about it, but we have one of the, if not the best promoter in dirt track racing.
1,000%.
Hands down. You can argue that case with me. Anybody that wants to argue that case with me, we can go look at numbers, and we'll prove that pretty easily.
His partners, right? His staff, again, JC, Gunner, Matt, yourself.
He's put very important people in place, and it's. I think if every track would look at, and I'm not saying Matt's done everything right, because we all have our downfalls. We all go through our struggles. It's just how you present it to the community will be whether you're successful or not. But, all the things that Matt's done or is in the process of doing, when Matt purchased that track, he sat down with a lot of us, and he's got I think it's a team of 10 people. That's his advisory board, is what he calls it for the Speedway. But if he had a vision 5 years ago when he bought this track, this is my plan, and this is how I'm going to obtain that plan, but it's going to take everybody to be on board and be 100% committed to make this work. And I can honestly say in the 5 years now, because this will be the sixth year now, everything that he said he was going to do in those 5 year plans has come true. He's done every bit of it. And that hasn't gone without endless nights, sleepless nights, a lot of money invested, a lot of people invested in the Speedway. And I think until a racetrack finds that, don't want to say happy medium, but until they find the support of the community and they look at the track as a business,
right,
will it ever be successful?
Right. You have to have that team. You have to have community involvement, which that's a struggle in itself.
That's the biggest hurdle any track will have, will be getting the community on board with what they're doing.
But then you have to turn and go, look at how many people Matt relies on to make the Fairbury Speedway what it is. It's a lot. A lot of people don't think about it, but I mean, I don't know what your numbers are on weekly nights, but I know for the Prairie Dirt, it's I don't even know. I'm going to say the wrong number here, but he mentions it over the course of the weekend. I know when he gets on Swab Talk, he drops the number for sure. But from all the car parkers to concession workers to this to that the other, I mean,
it's over 100 people.
Yes,
for the PDC. That week of the PDC, we'll have over 100 people employed at the track doing one thing or another.
But you have like Barb and Chuck Hendershot that they clean up the garbage. You have, Stacy and Trish with the food and so on. So everyone has their one.
Everyone
thing,
has their niche.
But and you have gate workers and so on and so forth. But honestly, I've been around and I've met quite a few of those people, fortunately, and I can't say there's one that isn't passionate about being there.
You are 100% correct, and that you have to have that. And it's not something that Matt requires. I think the majority of the people that are under Matt's hand right now, I don't know if I could really pick one out that I could honestly say isn't there because they want to be there.
Right.
Every person that is at that track is because that's where they want to be on their Saturday nights.
And I don't think it has to do with the success of Fairbury either. It has to do with their love of the racetrack, what it was, what it is now, what it will ever be.
Yes.
And I think, I've been fortunate to be close to Matt in some circumstances, and I would go to war, right? Like, it's one of those things like,
yeah. They'd be, that is, and I know people say it all the time, but that's it's definitely, the Speedway is definitely my second family.
Yeah.
I mean, if there was anything I would ever need, I know I could call on Matt and he would help out in any way he could. And that's what he's tried to portray to all the people that work there. And, a lot of the other tracks, the Fairbury Speedway was in the same position that most of these other tracks are, which is volunteer people. You need volunteer people to make a Saturday night of racing be successful. And some people are going to be committed to doing that, and then some people are just going to be there to be taking up space.
Yep.
Because they want to be in the races for free. They don't want to look at what's better or what could make it better, where our vision is always, what can we do better? What can we change on, the PDC that could, you start to think when it was 30,000 to win, you're going, my God, what could we possibly do to make this bigger and better?
Then
And
Shepard goes on to win $100,000.
Yeah. Then next thing you know, it's 50,000 to win. Next thing you know, well, the driver's got a chance at 100,000 to win. Now a lucky fan's going to win 50,000. It's just his out of box thinking that has made Fairbury Speedway successful.
It really has. And even again, I haven't been a part of it a lot. Like we come in for the PDC and are very fortunate to help Matt during that. And we work very closely with Matt and Chad Bazell during that time. JC this last year, but you have those conversations, I feel like, of like, okay, we've been a part of this for a while, but next year, what can we do? And I think this last year was kind of like pit bikes and that whole, everyone has to have a pit bike and a four-wheeler and this, that, and the other. And it's like personal cars coming in and out. And, it was like, okay, what can we do to maybe slow down this traffic a little bit? And,
right.
You think of little things like that, but, Matt's.
Well, and
Matt's
it's people like yourself that, that's kind of the mindset they have when they're there. They're not there just to collect a paycheck and go home. They're there to make sure everybody has the best experience they can have at the Fairbury Speedway. And we get asked a gazillion times, what if there's one thing you could say about the Speedway that is attractive to you, what would that be? And I'll tell people every time, the atmosphere.
Yeah.
It's the atmosphere.
It's like I've gone to a few, I'm not a ton, but I've been fortunate to travel around a little bit at least in the state. And there's not a racetrack that I go into that is like Fairbury, where you just kind of get chills and you go, wow. Again, we've been fortunate enough to see some of these teams arrive for the first time, or fans, because Google Maps brings you to 3rd Street. So
absolutely,
people come in and roll in, and you have this like, okay, someone gets in at 5:30 in the morning and you haven't seen a squirrel move in a couple hours. My dad had this story, Racing Jason, he's on Twitter. I went to bed, but apparently at like 6:00 in the morning, Racing Jason pulls up and like starts jumping around and going nuts because he's at Fairbury, and like I think Dad gave him a ride around the pits or something. Like, I mean, the whole weekend, every time he came by from Thursday through Saturday now, I mean, he just stopped and was going crazy just because, like, one person gave him a ride around at a fall at 6:00. Yeah. But it's those things of like those teams rolling in and just going like, so this is what they call falls, huh?
Yeah.
It's like, you don't. There's one other track that has given me that chill vibe, and that's Eldora.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And because the atmosphere at Eldora is obviously way different.
Yeah, and that's a total different animal, Eldora than Speedway. When you're dealing with a little bull ring like us compared to a huge track like that. But they do everything right there. They do it the right way. They do it how the fans would want it done, and it is. I'll tell you, it's I get. The big races when they come to Fairbury, I mean, I get chills. I mean, just doing what I do, being fortunate enough to do and what Matt allows me to do there, and the range that he gives me there, I mean, is it's like no other. Yeah. It really is. When there's 8,000 plus people there for the Prairie Dirt Classic, and I mean, you're standing down on the horse track and the national anthem is about to be sung, and you look around at that place. It about brings you to tears. It really does. It
honestly does. And there's a couple races a year that I actually get to be a fan, because either I was working them, I was racing in them. Like when I race, I mean, I pay attention to my race and I don't really watch the rest of the night. Yeah. The Prairie Dirt, really, until you get to, because we're still kind of helping through Friday afternoon, so like whatever. But Saturday is actually that one day where we kind of get to be race fans, unless Matt needs something during the day. We're at that disposal. Yep. But when it rolls around about 5:30 and everyone's coming up the bleachers, and you're sitting there and you're shoulder to shoulder, end of July, sweating, but then everything kind of goes quiet for a second, and the American when they bring the American Legion on, and they do the 21 gun salute and the anthem, and it. Standing on the backstretch, I'm literally getting chills right now. My hair standing up.
It'll do that to you.
Like you're just, I'm really, my whole body. Like I stand there and I look around and I go, wow, because I mean I'm connected. I feel like on a little bit of a deeper level, especially that whole week.
Absolutely.
You go from, okay guys, here it is. Here's loading day on Monday of like, just a couple people are there to, we're at capacity plus some, and now. You have the anthem. Like I remember, I just like it's indescribable.
It is. I was just gonna say it's hard to describe those feelings to somebody, especially if they're not, a real dedicated dirt track fan. But it is that whole. I guess a pre-show to the PDC is just like I mean, it gives me chills every time, every year. It doesn't matter. I know how it's going to go down. I know the format. I know how each thing's going to fall in place, but yet every year it gets me, and it chokes me up. It really does, to know, just to be standing next to Matt Curl and looking around, seeing what he's built and all the heart, sweat, blood that he's put into that racetrack for this moment, this one moment. Yes. I mean, you can, all the races are great, from Falls Cup to Summer Nationals to, Mars, some of the, to the Mars series. They're all great, but there's just something electric about the PDC that is second to none.
You know, I remember him saying, like, you know, PDC prep starts on right as soon as the checkered flag. Honestly, even before the checker drops on the year before. we're
already thinking,
and it's just, yeah. I mean that has to be something. Just standing next to Matt, I'm sure I would probably get caught looking at him going. Like, imagine,
I do.
His mind during that just has to be just refreshing, and like,
yep.
I've been to Gateway for the opening at Gateway is somewhat special.
It
gives
for
you
sure
some chills. I remember Eldora when I went the last time I was at Eldora, and there's a beautiful sunset. It goes like just silent, and you know
thousands of people,
and it's everyone's. It's you know, those are the moments you go, wow.
There's a respect.
And then you hear the and these late models are getting ready to just go hog wild, and I mean everyone's just everyone sits down and hey,
it's go time.
You have
now.
A tacky racetrack that's getting ready to get ripped on.
And I think a couple years ago, I think it was 2 years ago, we were right at that pre-show to the Saturday night of the Prairie Dirt Classic, and they come out and we'd go through the whole infield pre-show and everything, and Rusty's there, getting ready to sing the anthem, and a lot of emotions are going through your mind stuff, and at that particular time I was standing next to Matt, and I thought, I wonder what's going through his head right now, because it's the build up to that point, and once you've gotten to the anthem's about ready to start for the Saturday night of the Prairie Dirt Classic,
you can kind of breathe.
You can breathe. And I remember looking at Matt a couple years ago, and Rusty started in with some.
It's God Bless America.
Yeah,
right?
God Bless America. He starts in with that and then rolls into the anthem. I could see him starting to crack, and it made me start to crack. And I mean, I think after it was all done and finally the first engine roared to life and kind of took everybody's attention off of us, I turned around and he was sitting on the concrete blocks there, with his kind of head down and his hands on his head. And I knew what he was going through. I felt the same thing he did. And I just walked over. I sat down beside him. I didn't say anything. I didn't say a word. I sat down beside him and I put my arm around him and I just said, "We made it." And he just looked up with this big smile on his face, and you could tell he was kind of tearing up some, and I felt at that point right there that, man, he's got to be on top of the world, man.
Right. That's just indescribable. Like I said, I've been fortunate to work closely with Matt a couple of times just with that stuff. And, obviously being in the trenches all the time, that feeling is just magnitude. Like I have one picture that Josh James got of me and Matt riding on a golf cart. Like there's a couple of images out there. One when I was younger of me just like riding with Matt and just I'm like I catch myself fangirling. I'm like holy shit. Like Matt Curl, like wow. Like
he's right here.
Like I've been like pretty close with this guy for like the last like week. Like what? And I was the same way when I started working a little bit with Flo, and there was a couple times that I've worked with them and, standing in the production trailer around the event and, Dustin Jarrett or Ben Shelton. It's like, you're working with those guys and I've asked Dustin for advice before and so on and so forth. And then, like a guy like Michael Rigsby walks into the trailer, but addresses me just like, we're, "Hey Jake, how are I'm like,
it's like
I'm like, hold on. You know what I mean? Like, hold on, stop a second. Let's collect. Like, whoa. And you get to be in that room with those players.
A lot of intelligent people. A
lot of people don't understand that, I think, of like, you think about Matt, you think about Michael, and think about what they've created. And like, I've seen Matt. People probably think, oh, Matt's the face of it, but Matt also marks out the pit stop. He walks and measures.
Anything that has had to been that's needed to been done to prepare for the PDC, at some point in time, Matt's done it.
Right.
And throughout his career.
That's the type of leader in anything. I think it's quite
lead
literally
by example.
Lead by example, and if you're not willing to get in the trenches, like the people if you're not willing to do the job that you expect the people to be helping you do the job, then you're not a very good leader.
That's right. Yeah. And we all know we have our certain duties we're supposed to do, but we also all know that we will wear multiple hats from night to night, and that's what we do. It's not, we've been told to do that. It's not that that's part of our job duty description. We know this is, the place runs like a, fine-oiled machine. And Matt does not micromanage anybody. He gives you a basic outline. Here's your duties. You need anything, let me know. Mm-hmm. And what I try to do is let Matt do what Matt's good at, and that's when the races start. That's where Matt is at his best. And I want him to stay focused at that throughout the night. And, I've been fortunate enough that he's given me a lot of leeway to take care of everything outside the racetrack.
So I guess we've never even touched on this in the, damn near 2 hours, 3 hours.
You better ask your questions quick, because I'm about to get out of here.
He's about to go. But race day operations manager, you talked about it a little bit earlier. We went over it some, but you're essentially you're taking the night sponsors and you're giving them the best experience you can.
That's one of the things I do, but that is my primary. I would say if I didn't have anything else on my plate, that is my main focus. Because every night we have a sponsor. Whether our regular nights are Falls Cup,
right?
So it's a series. It's we have sponsors that are sponsoring these Falls Cup nights. So I want to make sure they have the apps, whether it's their first time or 20th time there. Every time I want to make sure that they have the best possible experience they could have at any racetrack. And I think, I can safely say I think we do that better than any racetrack around. Because I've talked to some other sponsors that, are generous enough to not only, support our track, but they support other tracks too. And, unfortunately, it's not the same everywhere you go, and I get that. And not everybody can do what we can do. That's just a given. I'm not rubbing anybody's nose in that. We're just fortunate enough that that's how we are. But besides that, so basically, anything outside of the racing area, the racetrack, I kind of oversee. Okay. Now we have somebody in charge of food, and we have somebody in charge of alcohol, and we have somebody in charge of ticketing. And those are all very key players, very closely knitted with Matt Curl in the operations. Security, we have somebody in charge of security. But once the racing starts, all questions, that need answers, or, things that may arise throughout the night, there's really two people that answer those calls, and that's me and Carrie.
Right.
And so I help wherever I'm needed. I'll go around, collect money. I'll help in ticketing. I take care of the 50-50, making sure they're set up, that money's collected. I help with security as needed, control, grounds control, cleanup. If there's issues with bathrooms, if there's issues with parking, if a lot of questions that normally would be directed to Matt are now directed to me or Carrie. And, that allows Matt to focus on what he's really good at. And that's when the green flag drops. So we don't want him to be bothered getting a million calls. So, I've been fortunate enough that I know how his operation, how he wants it to run. And I've worked under some really intelligent people that have been in the racing industry a long, long time, that know the right way and the wrong way. And I've been fortunate enough to be, work underneath those people. And we just try to have a very family-oriented atmosphere. If you can do that at a racetrack.
Yeah, and I think Fairbury does it
Probably
well.
better than most, but we want everybody to have the best experience that they can possibly have at a racetrack, and when they leave there, say, gosh, they were right. That is one of the most amazing places on earth. I mean, and it really is. I mean, and when it comes right down to it. And of course, I'm going to be biased but I've been to some other tracks, and I've seen the way they operate. And granted, not everybody has what we have. I get that. But, it takes a lot of good personnel to, the Fairbury Speedway has put Fairbury on the map. There ain't no doubt about it.
Extremely.
There's people that wouldn't have the slightest idea where the hell Fairbury is. But if you mention, have you heard of Fairbury Speedway? Oh, yeah. Don't they have a big race there, the Prairie Dirt Classic or something? Yeah, everybody can associate.
I was talking to you as we walked in. Joe Bradney and Darren Moffitt are merchandise guys for the World of Outlaws. And when I was on the phone with him, and we've grown a relationship, deeper than just friends, I would say, one of those like, needed a phone call, I'm sure I could call. We don't talk all that much, but, when we connect, it's special. And him and Darren both are like, we met you and your dad doing the PDC stuff, and it's like, we just can't wait to get back to Fairbury. It's like, I think I'm going to go over there tomorrow on my way to Flow and to be able to say hey and, see them guys. And it's like, they already were saying like, hey, we're coming to Fairbury. So like, we already can't wait. And
right,
that's, still a couple months out and everything. But Chuck, I tell you what, your story is super special. You've come a long way. With special circumstances, special opportunities have arisen for you, and I think it's pretty admirable what you've been able to turn of that. Because admittedly, you had some tough goes, right, between
had
job
some bumps
changes
along the road. Yeah, absolutely, and probably no worse than other. You can always look at it as, and me and my wife joke about it. We do is there's always somebody out there that's got it worse than we do. Yep. People can look at us and go, oh, my God, I just don't know. God, I feel so bad for you. No, don't, man, because there's families out there that are struggling way more than we are and having to deal with way more than we are. And, it's none of it's come easy, but, I'll go back to what I said before, God supposedly doesn't put more in front of you than you can handle, and he's tested our limits sometimes, but no, I've enjoyed it. I appreciate you having me on the show. I really didn't think we would get into that side of my lifestyle, but I'm so glad you did bring that up, because me and my wife are very much advocates for making people aware of cerebral palsy and what it details and what a lifestyle can look like. I do have one more question before we wrap. I ask it to everybody, but is there any avenues that people can look into cerebral palsy that you'd like to share? How can people maybe better resonate with that, help with that? Is there anything you would like to share as far as helping? I think what helped us the most is find you a caseworker. And, it's something you have to contact the state with. Usually it's Human Services. But, God, if you can, get you a caseworker. Because, and I'm not saying all of them are great, because I think we're on our third one right now. And she's actually new. But the one we had before her was, oh, my gosh, she was heaven sent. I mean, you'll get some that are just there to work the system and collect a paycheck and not real helpful. I'm going to be honest. But if I can give any parents one bit of advice on caring for a special needs child, is never give up. Never give up on your goals for your child. And two is never be afraid to ask for help, because it takes an army of people, whether that's family members, friends, doctors, but it is. Was it a lifestyle we chose? Absolutely not, but there's a lot of things given to you in life that are not your decision,
That's right.
And you just got to make the best of it.
You got to adapt and conquer and move on. And
that's right.
You touched a little bit there on my last question, and advice for parents with special needs. However, I like to ask every guest I can come across this one question, and I phrase it as this. If there's one piece of advice or pieces of advice in general, whether that's directed at, I don't care if it's from high schoolers to senior citizens, everywhere in between, life advice, whatever advice means to you in the general scheme, what's Chuck Vaughan's words of wisdom?
Be true to yourself. I mean, don't sell yourself short. And, you know, if there's going to be times in life that you're going to feel like you probably want to quit, because trust me, I've been there many, many a times. But stay true to the course, you know, stay focused on what the end goal is. And if anything, you know, you have to set goals for yourself. That's the only way you can grow and become better than what the person you were yesterday. And I'm not saying that I've stayed true to that course the whole way, you know, but we've had a little different avenue of our life than, you know, maybe the average person. But if I could say anything, is just stay true to yourself.
Awesome. Well, Chuck, we've elapsed, I believe.
I don't even
if I'm
want to
reading
look
the
at the
clock,
time.
If I'm reading the clock right, it is 9:32. Is that what you're saying, Ryan
I think we're
Ziegler?
9:43,
and we started
right
at I don't know. We're a while into this.
7:30ish,
Wow.
maybe. I don't know.
If you're still listening to this, thank
which
you.
you're probably not. But
You know, it takes a special person to listen to a 3-hour podcast.
absolutely. Yeah.
You know, but
Maybe you were getting ready to go to bed, and this kind of helped you go to bed. That could be too. So
we've Ryan and I have elapsed 2 podcasts today. We shoot a video on Monday. I'm on the road all weekend. Yeah. Anyway, I think we're both ready for bed. I'm sure you're ready for a drive back.
I do very much appreciate you
Yes.
invite me on and let me share my story that I hope, you know, maybe influences some parents that maybe are struggling out there. Maybe they're just their story's just getting started, you know. So
I think it's so important, and I've told you this, you know, off camera too, that the story behind people is so important, because there's a lot more from the surface than what you know.
From what you see on an everyday basis, whether it's somebody that's a close friend or somebody you don't know at all, you know, always remember that, you know, could be a lot of things going on behind closed doors that
you have no
idea how bad they could be.
That's, you know, I was fortunate enough to come across the path of, and we will wrap this up, but I came across the path of, his name was Dale Sizemore. How I got in touch with him is I did an interview on Veterans Day. He was actually within the battle of in Somalia for Black Hawk Down.
Yeah.
He was was not one of the first teams in, but one of the recovery teams is kind of right, but one of the reinforcement teams coming in. But he talked about that time and whatever. But one of his advices was straight up, don't be a shithead and just be a better human. And
pretty simple, you know,
I've thought about
but
that quite a bit,
hard for some people to follow that.
Just to be a better human. Like, and again, you know, I realized when I started, and not that I shut them out, right? But like, started acknowledging maybe some of those special needs kids more, and like when you pass them in the hallway, say hi. Take a second just to be like, hey, you know. And for Adam's case, you know, like I said, being able to connect with him, saying hi when I saw him made both of our days. I guarantee it. And that goes with anyone. I walk into a place, I bet, go into a gas station worker and just say thank you and have a engaged conversation there.
Yes.
I guarantee you it changes both of your days.
Try something as simple as smiling at somebody that you've never seen before. I bet you 9 out of 10 times you'll get a smile back.
Yep, and because I bet they go like, wow, like it's just.
I don't even know that person.
I've walked past people, and yeah, you can tell people's change, or people's mood can change just on a little bit of it. Like
the simplest gesture.
Hold a door.
Yeah, simplest gesture can change. Actually, can maybe even change the outcome of somebody's day. Yeah, you know what I'm saying,
right? It can. You could have you may, and again, we're getting another rabbit hole here, but Like,
you're right, though. Be a better person. Just try to be a better person. That's your advice there. That's spot on. Just be a better person.
Someone could be on the edge of debating whether or not they want to continue. And
Absolutely.
little things. I mean, and this goes both ways. A little comment could push them over the edge, and a nice little comment could take the water from the top of the glass.
Yeah, absolutely.
But Chuck, I tell you what, again, we've gone for a while now, but it's been a great conversation, and you can thank Ryan Ziegler too, and my cameraman,
yes, Ryan,
who's helped me.
Who stayed with us the whole night.
Well, Ryan also gave me a
Poor
note
guy.
when I got to a certain point. I think we checked at like 2:11, and he goes, "Keep it going," and I'm like, "All right." So I listened to my producer there, Chuck. Thank you so much, and
Yes.
look forward to continuing to see how your story goes, man.
All right. Take care. Thanks, Jake.